This is the story of how a simple gift bought for fun changed my marriage, my family, and my life. Let me introduce myself. I'm Darren, 54 years old, married to Caroline Kaz for 28 years. We live on the Yorkshire coast in the north of England. The first time I saw Caroline, she caught my eye. She had a lovely smile and beautiful blue eyes. She didn't think she was beautiful, but I knew she was perfect. We fell in love quickly and got engaged after 3 months. We got married the following year, and I couldn't have been happier. We were celebrating our son Scott's 21st birthday when everything changed. Having Scott was a blessing, as it took us a while to conceive him. We had always wanted a bigger family, but it wasn't meant to be. Still, we cherished the time we had together. Scott and I were close, and we even shared a love for genealogy. We discovered some interesting family connections, which excited us. Caroline wasn't as interested in our family tree, and that was okay. We all have separate interests sometimes. A few years later, I decided to get an ancestry DNA testing kit for Scott's birthday. It was something we could do together, a little father-son activity. I didn't mention it to Caroline because I knew she wasn't a fan of these things. It was just something fun for Scott and me. Little did I know, this innocent gift would turn my world upside down. When I came home one night, I found Caroline crying on the couch. I immediately worried that something terrible had happened. She eventually managed to tell me that she had seen the DNA testing kit, and it made her think about something she had kept secret for years. "I did it for us," she said between tears. "I wanted us to have a family." In that moment, everything changed. She confessed that Scott wasn't biologically mine, that someone else had gotten her pregnant. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was devastated. How could you do this? I shouted, my anger getting the best of me. She tried to explain, saying it had been so long since we had a child of our own. But deep down, I was furious. We had been told that there was nothing wrong with us, that we could have a baby. Yet she decided to do something behind my back. I couldn't have a calm conversation with her in that moment. The anger and betrayal consumed me. But before I walked away, I needed to know the truth. "You thought Superman's sperm would be better than mine?" I scoffed. "Where did you find this so-called superhero?" She looked shocked, realizing the gravity of her actions. "Where?" I shouted. "It was Angus, she said quietly. "I don't actually remember leaving the house. I know logically that I had to walk through 2 rooms in the hallway to get out of the house, but I have no memory of it. What I do remember was that if I hadn't left at that point, I was capable of doing something that I might later regret." I roared out of the drive and eventually pulled up on a quiet bit of the promenade. Out of season, it was almost deserted. Angus, as in my best friend, our best man, and the closest thing in the world I had to a brother. She might as well have stabbed me. Angus and I had been friends since we first met aged 18 at university. We were both doing art degrees. I took mine into teaching, but he moved into art restoration. Wherever we went at university, people assumed we were brothers rather than roommates. We were the same build and coloring, though my eyes were a paler green than his. He was an inch shorter than me in height. We shared a room, so I also knew that he was an inch or 2 shorter than me in other departments too. Why had I thought about that? Typical male, now I took a small crumb of comfort from knowing that, I suppose. We were best mates, inseparable at uni. He was my best man and later I was his. Kaz and Angus didn't actually meet till a couple of weeks before the wedding, as he'd been living in France for a year working in a gallery and honing his restoration skills. Kaz laughed when she met him, saying how we must have come out of the same pod. He was excited when he came back a fortnight later for the wedding, as he had met Kate a few days before. She later became his wife. He had really fallen hard, a bit like I had for Kaz. See, I told you how alike we were. He was at home visiting his parents on the Lancashire coast, and he'd met Kate at their church. His parents and Kate were part of what I called a happy-clappy born-again type of church. He was a member, but he certainly didn't make an issue about it in the student union bar. He was a member of the Christian Union, though, and I knew he was a virgin and intended to stay that way until marriage. When he later married Kate, I know they were both virgins. I knew he was anxious about that on the morning of the wedding, so I tried to give him a pep talk. Anxious and a virgin does not make for a fulfilling wedding night I would have imagined. Anyway, At the wedding, her family all assumed that I was his brother and not his 3 actual brothers that were there, as I looked most like him. I was an only child, so this link with Angus was very important to me. I treasured it. He really was the closest thing I had to a brother and had been my friend for 37 years. I loved him. Kate and Angus had gone on to have 4 children. 3 girls, Rachel, Ruth, and Rhian, before we had Scott. They had their boy, Jake, 6 months after Scott was born. As an only child, I relished being Uncle Darren, both to them and to Kaz's 2 nephews. Although they lived on the opposite coast to us, it was only a few hours away, so we tended to visit them as we only had 1 child to transport. Scott loved being part of this large family, and we got together for high days and holidays every other month or so. Jake and Scott were best pals too. They both loved anything to do with transport, a bit like myself. Angus wasn't interested in that, so I took the boys to lots of car museums, bus fairs, and classic car rallies. It was our thing. Angus and I talked weekly, later sending texts and more recently daily jokes and memes that we'd found online. Kate was an odd one. I really liked her and I could always make her laugh, but I sometimes found her a little brittle and inflexible. Harry Potter and Halloween were banned because of their religious beliefs. She did insist that Angus became more involved with the church. I did sometimes think that she was a little harsh with Angus where the kids were concerned. At his 40th birthday, she really lost it with him before his party over something trivial. After the party, we actually came home a day early. I wanted to defend him, you see, but I knew better than to get between a husband and wife. She knew it had bothered me, though, and said that she felt she could let rip in front of me because I knew what he was like. Everyone else always thinks that he is perfect, but only you and I know him, warts and all. As I sat in my car on my own, I realized that I didn't know my oldest friend at all. In fact, I didn't have an old friend. The 2 people I trusted most in the whole world had betrayed me, and I only had Scott left. But what if he didn't want me either? I texted Scott straight away. I needed to see him before he saw Kaz. I needed to tell him that whatever happened, he would always be my son to me, and nothing would ever change that. I could only trust that he would feel the same about me. We had managed to buy a few buy-to-let properties, and he lived in one of those. He was worried when he first saw me approach his little flat and instantly said, "God, Dad, you look awful. Are you ill?" As he came forward to hug me, he pulled away. "Have you been sick? You stink." "What's going on?" I repeated what had happened as best I could and told him that I always wanted to be his dad before I broke down in sobs. He got hold of my face like I was the child and he was the father and said, "You are the best dad, my only father." I don't even want to know who this other guy was. I don't need to know. He means nothing to me. He doesn't matter. I don't want to ever meet him. He must have seen me flinch at what he must have thought were reassuring words. "I have already met him, haven't I, Dad? I can tell by your face." I could only nod. "Who?" "Uncle Angus, the jerk. I'll teach him a lesson. You stay here. I'm going to talk to Mom." I washed up as best I could. I needed to be strong for him now. I couldn't shake away the feeling that just a few hours ago, my life seemed almost perfect. Now it was all a lie. Every foundation that I based my life on had crumbled, except my love for Scott. After showering, I put on some of Scott's joggers and a t-shirt. They were a bit snug, but I knew he wouldn't mind. He returned less than an hour later. He was seething. He also had a small bag of my clothes. "I've told her you're staying here tonight, and she's got till tea time tomorrow to pack her stuff. She can move in here, and we will go home. Why should you not be in your own bed just because she wanted to sample someone else's? I'm not leaving you on your own, Dad, and the way I feel about her at the moment. I doubt I will be speaking to her for a long time." "What else did she say, son?" "She said that she loves you and we will get over this as a family. She's delusional, Dad. She's lost the plot. You do know that I can never forgive her, don't you? I don't care if it was just a one-off because she was feeling desperate. She deceived me and lied to me every day for over 20 years. I can't forgive that. You will need to talk to her yourself, Dad. Although I don't think that anything is going on now, from what she let slip, it was definitely more than a one-off. I've already given her the spare key, so you can just go home after school tomorrow as normal. I'll meet you there. You will be okay to go to work tomorrow, won't you?" "Probably not. But it's a training day before the half term, so I will have to manage. They are very awkward about you being ill or whatever on the day before we break up for the holidays. They think we're faking for cheap flights. Scott passed me the bag and said, "Dad, I think I've got what you need in here. Anything else, just take mine." Mom was very reluctant to let me take anything, but I didn't give her much choice. "I'm sorry I won't be here when you get up, Dad. I've got a very early start, but I'm only a phone call away. We'll get through this and I'll be with you every step of the way." I was so proud of this young man. I looked at him and said quietly, "I'm meant to be supporting you. That's what my job is. Dad, you've looked after me always, and now it's my turn to look after you." I won't lie, I'm shocked and very angry. The only difference is I haven't lost anything. I've still got you and Mom's there if I choose to accept her. That's my decision, and I don't know what that will be yet. I haven't really lost anything, but you have. I promise you, you'll never lose me. See what I told you? How could you not love this kid? I actually managed to sleep a little, much to my surprise. I did hear Scott go out at about 4 a.m. I knew it would be early, but I didn't think it would be that early. I managed at school, but only just. I wasn't really taking in anything from the training course, and when I was asked a question, I had to make it up. I got away with it, but my closest colleague Graham asked if I was okay during the tea break. I told him I thought I had a headache, and he agreed I wasn't looking well. We finished by 4:00 p.m., so I wandered round the nearest supermarket for a while. I didn't want to go home and find that Kaz was still there. At 5:15 p.m. I turned into the drive, but found Kaz's car parked in her usual spot. Great. I nearly turned back round again and felt that fictitious headache might soon become a reality. Well, I suppose I had to find out the truth, sooner or later. Best get it over with. Kaz greeted me with a smile. "I didn't expect you to be here," I said quietly. "I know what I promised Scott, but I wanted, needed, to talk to you first." "Yeah, well, you've already proved that your promises don't mean much. Just let me explain and then I'll go to Scott's, I promise. I realize that you've had a terrible shock, but I need to explain. Well, I want the full truth, Kaz. I can't promise that it will make any difference, but I promise you, if I find out you have left anything out, I won't ever speak to you again." "Have you spoken to Angus?" Kaz asked. "Why would I want to speak to him?" "Well, I just wanted you to know that I haven't told him that you know. I wanted to speak to you first. Thank you. I'm sure putting me first for once was difficult for you. So the floor is yours. I'll try my best not to interrupt. You know how desperate I'd got to have a child. All that crying every month. You held me and reassured me, but it wasn't enough. I was desperate to have a child. Angus was the perfect person, you see. He looked just like you, but that didn't matter in the end as Scott looked so much like my side. I couldn't take the risk, you see. He was so like you in looks, and he'd already fathered 3 girls. Kate had told me that he only had to look at her, and she was pregnant. So how exactly did you talk to my best friend about this?" "Hi, Angus. It seems your oldest and dearest pal isn't getting the job done when it comes to helping me have a baby. You are tried and tested in the baby-making department. Would you like a go at it?" "Darren, no. It wasn't like that. He knew that you felt you were letting me down. He knew how much you were hurting. He only agreed to help us because of you. He just wanted to help. To help himself to my wife, you mean?" "No, it wasn't like that. He was only ever going to be a donor. The first time we met in a hotel, it certainly wasn't to be intimate in any way. We were going to use a turkey bastard, that was the plan. He would go off to the bathroom and have a shower and do his thing. He said being in the shower would help. I would go to the door and he'd pass me his stuff, and he promised to stay out of the room until I was decent. We would have seen less of each other's bodies than we have seen on the beach or at the pool numerous times before. It did feel strange and very sterile. I started to doubt if this was the way I wanted to create a child for us. I stayed on the bed, but I did slip my clothes off, so I could do it as quickly as possible when he was ready. He couldn't do it, though. It didn't work. He came out wrapped in a towel. He needed something to excite him. I just couldn't waste this opportunity to get pregnant. You must see that? No? I don't, Kaz. I really don't. I'm so sorry, but I needed it to work. He started to get excited. I thought it was all right. But it wasn't all right, Darren. It was awful. Quite the worst experience of my life. He just didn't seem to know what to do. How he fathered 3 children I couldn't understand. He had nothing on you. He sat on the end of the bed and cried. I thought it was guilt about what we'd done, guilt about you. I put my arm around him to tell him it was okay, and he hugged me and said that was amazing. I never knew that it could be like that. As good as that. Thank you. As he sobbed in my arms, this big, strong man, so like you, I just couldn't believe it. He thought that was good? He was thanking me for the worst bit of intimacy ever. I don't think that I've ever felt as sorry for anyone in my life. He had just risked his marriage, his family, and your friendship to give us our family. I owed him, which was when I decided to thank him properly. I hadn't planned it. It just happened in the moment. It wasn't about you or me. It was something separate. I didn't love him or care about him like that. It was a mixture of being grateful and feeling overwhelmingly sorry for him. He had the family we wanted so desperately, but he didn't have a love like ours. He really had no idea. So now we've moved on to a compassionate act? I suppose you could say that if you were going to be crude, I carried on comforting him, rocking him, and his head dropped down to my chest. I comforted him like he was my baby. I was just comforting him, really, that was all. It was only then that I began to teach him about love, just like you'd taught me. The only difference was that you'd taught me about making love. This was just intimacy, the mechanics of good intimacy. There was no love, I promise you. Yes, I did things for him that he'd never experienced with Kate, and I took pleasure in his pleasure, like you've done so often with me. It wasn't about me, though, it was about him. I never ever did anything for him that I didn't do with you. How reassuring. I always made sure of it. Whenever we met, I came home and got close to you. I couldn't bear the thought that you were missing out on anything. You always had the same on those days. But I didn't have the same, did I? I had sloppy seconds. He still had a faithful wife and I had someone else's lover. I stopped as an awful thought occurred to me. I made it to the sink this time as I began to feel sick. As I was trying to get myself together, I splashed some cold water on my face and turned to ask her another question. It was then that I spotted Scott in the doorway with his phone in his hand. He put his finger to his lips and backed slowly out of the doorway. I wasn't sure how much of this he needed to hear, but I trusted him to do the right thing. Kaz, I bet you had a right laugh at my expense, making me into a fool, belittling me. No, Darren, no, we never did that. We both loved you so much. In fact, it was easier if we never talked about you when we met. I told Angus very early on that if ever asked for a comparison of intimacy with him or with you, he would always fall short, so he never went there again. So Scott was right? This did carry on then? It wasn't just a one-off? Kaz looked at me, would it make a difference? I shook my head. Yes, it carried on, though not for a long time. I got pregnant that first time. I felt it. I just knew. They say some women know, and I knew. When I came home to you that night, and we made love, that felt different too. I truly relaxed and just enjoyed making love with my beautiful husband. It had been a long time since we'd made love without that being our ultimate goal. Just loving you, Darren. You're the only man that I've ever loved. I have only ever got close with one man, you. So why carry it on? Was it some sort of practice on your part? Well, I had to. We wanted more children, so I had to keep trying with him. When Scott was about 8 months, we met in Leeds. That's where we always met. Never the same place twice. We were careful. Angus could manage to get away then as things had settled down after Jake was born. Leeds was ideal, as it was in the middle. About an hour and a half away from home for either of us. As long as we were lucky with the traffic, it was fine. We could get away with it. We did too until you had to mess with that damn family tree DNA stuff. Don't even think about blaming me for this. I don't deserve any of this. I have done everything I could to make you happy. Haven't I been a good loving husband and a good provider? You've been an amazing husband, the best. You've meant the world to me, but we couldn't have the one thing I truly wanted, a child. I was shocked that she could say that out loud. I knew that's what you wanted too, and I found a solution to give it to you. I stared at her, shocked, and then slowly began to clap, applauding her. Well done for finding a solution. It's interesting, though, that we don't have a house full of children, isn't it? We kept trying until you were 45, didn't we? Then we accepted that it wasn't going to happen. How long did you keep trying with Angus? A little bit before we stopped trying. A few months, perhaps. Are you seriously telling me that you were having a close relationship with my supposed best friend for a decade? Wow, I must have been incredibly naive. I feel like I've wasted my life. It was all a lie. I collapsed into a nearby chair, and Kaz moved closer to comfort me. Don't come near me. Don't touch me. Darren, I love you. Our relationship was real. How can you say it was a waste? We have so many wonderful memories, so much happiness. We've raised an amazing son together. No, Kaz, we raised your son together. I'm just fortunate that he chose me to be his father after all this. I realized that no matter what happened, Scott would always be my son, whether or not we shared the same blood. So, you just stopped seeing Angus just like that? Ended this secret affair. It wasn't like that. As soon as I realized there was little chance of getting pregnant at that age, I called it off. It wasn't about the physical aspect. It was never about that. I had you for that. We always had a wonderful love life, you know that. Well, it's a distant memory now, Kaz, but I thought it was. Obviously, it wasn't enough for you. Kaz, what I had with him couldn't compare. It was different, separate from us. I won't lie, it was pleasurable. I had trained him to fulfill all my desires, but even at its best, it couldn't compare to you. It couldn't because he wasn't you. Suddenly, I grew older, lost my job, and my new job made it harder to continue with our arrangement. I was getting bored with it anyway. I accepted that we would just have Scott, and that was the way it was meant to be. All that effort for nothing. I'm sorry that your infidelity became such a burden for you, Kaz. So, how did Angus react when it all ended? This affair that brought him tears of joy while it tore me apart. He had a mediocre love life with his own wife, but it sounds like he had an amazing one with mine, right? You're twisting things, Darren. It wasn't like that. Yes, he enjoyed it. Of course he did. He's a man, after all. But he did it for us, don't you see? To try and have more children. When I told him it had to end, he was disappointed, but he accepted it. He was sad, but he agreed. So that was it? Yes, except for one more time. Do you remember his 50th birthday? He was feeling down and he asked for just one more time. That was different though. I'm truly ashamed of that. It felt wrong. I knew I was truly being unfaithful that time. I'm sorry for that. Just sorry about that one time, his birthday treat. So, how often did you meet during this decade of trying to have more children? Every few months, 3 or 4 times a year when I was most fertile. I paused to think about this. So you were intimate with him around 40 times, maybe even more, on some occasions? You're making it sound cheap and vulgar. It was, Kaz. You made it cheap. You made yourself cheap. Did it never strike you as odd that he got you pregnant twice that first time, but then it never happened again during the 50 times you were at your most fertile? Well, I thought it was me, and I never gave up hope that it would work with him or with you. Thanks for remembering me in this baby-making affair. Yes, I could have still gotten you pregnant. Maybe it was you. Sadly, Kaz, I have some shocking news for you too. It doesn't compare to the devastation you've caused, but it's interesting. Before Jake was born, Angus had a vasectomy. He only told me about it. I even took him to the appointment. He begged me not to tell anyone, even Kate. He knew it wouldn't align with her religious beliefs. He already had 4 children under the age of 6. He couldn't risk having any more. No, Kaz screamed. So he wasn't trying to give us more children. He was just sleeping with a willing participant. A cheap affair that only cost the price of a hotel room, right? I suppose he paid? I bet he found some real budget deals online, I mused. Kaz flinched as I continued. A person who thought so little of her marriage vows, so little of the man who was supposedly her world, that she lied and deceived him for 21 years? You destroyed that love the first time you met him in that hotel room, even before you slept with him. You deceived me, betrayed my trust. What you did and continued to do was pure evil. If that's your idea of love, then you can keep it. Kaz looked at me, stunned, as if she believed that finally telling the truth would absolve her of all her past wrongdoings and lead to forgiveness. I couldn't believe that the woman I loved and respected could be so blind and show so little remorse for what she had done to me and our family. You were unfaithful to me for your own wants and needs. It had nothing to do with me. You let your ego be fed by someone who saw you as some sort of expert. Don't tell me you continued for the sake of having more children. I think you enjoyed the secrecy, the lies, and making a fool out of me. I will never forgive you, Kaz. Never. Get out of my sight. I don't want to look at you. As she turned, she finally noticed Scott standing in the doorway. How much did you hear? Enough to know that my mother is a selfish person. Scott, please, she whimpered. No, before you go, you might as well hear this. I went to see your lover today. I left early, not expecting it to take this long. It didn't seem fair that he could destroy our family and get away with it. I also wanted to let him know that I would never see him again and make sure he understood that I only have one father, and his name is Darren. He was a little shocked to see me at breakfast time. He was worried it was bad news. Well, it was bad news for him. By the way, Mom, Aunt Kate is really upset with you. That was before she knew the whole story. I thought it would be wise to record your confession for her, as she deserves to hear it too. I'm sure she'll want to pay you a visit. Kaz looked stunned, and Scott continued his tirade. At least you finally told the truth. Angus tried to lie. Apparently I was conceived through artificial insemination, and there was no physical intimacy involved. I told Aunt Kate that I didn't believe that was entirely true. Rianne was the most upset. It turns out she's had a crush on me for years, and to find out we're related shocked and disgusted her. He turned to me then. Dad, I also took the liberty of punching your former best friend in the face. Just one hit, but I did it for you. I knew you couldn't risk an assault charge and losing your job. I don't think he'll dare report me, especially after Aunt Kate delivered a knee to his groin later on. He turned back to his mother. Are you still here? At least you have somewhere to stay tonight. Angus is probably in a bed and breakfast by now. Kate kicked him out. I gave her your address at the apartment. I expect a visit from her. I knew I could never move past this betrayal. She had always been on my side, and it broke my heart to realize she hadn't been. The physical aspect of the affair was devastating enough to end our relationship, but what truly crushed me was the thought of him holding her, of him stroking her hair and telling her she was beautiful. Those intimate moments that I believed were only shared between us, the special moments that were part of the unique bond we shared. It was these thoughts that kept me awake at night in the following weeks as I faced my new reality. I felt that I would never measure up again. She chose someone else to give her the precious gift I wanted to give her so badly, but she was too selfish to give me time. I had trusted her with my life, and losing that trust changed me in ways I never could have imagined. When I thought about their affair, about how little time we had spent together in the past few years, I couldn't help but wonder if her desire for physical intimacy would eventually run out. What a pity it was that she wasted so much of it on him. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. You're probably wondering what I did about my former friend. I didn't do anything for about 6 weeks. I spoke to Kate and met up with her when she came to visit me. But I knew if Angus approached me, I wouldn't be able to control my actions. I blocked him on everything. I knew that Kate had filed for divorce just like me, and I knew his children weren't speaking to him. The girls were angry, but Jake was the most hurt. He only spoke to his father once, and it was to tell him he wished I was his father instead. I'm sure that must have hurt. Good. Each of the children reached out to me in some way to check on me. I worried about Rianne, as she was taking it the hardest. I think her feelings for Scott were stronger than she let on, and the revelation that they were related shocked and disgusted her. Kate and I had a long conversation. She had loved Angus but found him to be a difficult person to be with. She felt like she was taking care of another child at home, and his selfishness behind closed doors was shocking. She felt he wasn't supportive as a father and only made an effort when others were around, especially us. We both agreed that they had fooled us, and we had no idea any of this was happening. But we trusted them, and that was the most important thing. They used our love, trust, and faith in them against us. Kate and I will continue to be friends, and I hope I will always be a part of her and her children's lives. I did see Angus once more, just before Christmas. I traveled over to see Kate, Jake, and the girls. I needed to see them all face to face and give them my news. I wanted to see Angus for one last time to tell him that I was angry with him for ruining my life. I wasn't going to listen to his excuses. What was the point? What I didn't expect was his gloating. I had thought he might try to apologize, but no. Maybe he knew there was no point. Maybe he blamed me for everything he had lost. After all, he'd gotten away with it before I uncovered the truth. So I slept with your wife and gave her the one thing she really wanted, a child. I can't change it. There's nothing I can say, so what's the point? I know you dislike me and I don't blame you, but I don't regret it. They say that when you lay on your deathbed, you regret not having more pleasant experiences. Well, the only good times I've ever had were with Kaz. Not that cold-hearted person, Kate. No, I didn't love Kaz. That was your role, but I did love the closeness we had. I loved how she made me feel. I know I had to lie to her for it to continue. Even now, alone in this place, it was worth it. Even hurting you, my oldest friend, was worth it. Knowing that Scott is mine makes it worth it too. When he finished speaking, I simply showed him my phone. I showed him the message that had popped up in my inbox from the Ancestry Company the day before. It said that Scott was my son. It was the best Christmas present I had ever received. I think it was the best present for Scott and Rian too. Epilogue: 5 years have passed since that tumultuous time in my life, and my journey has taken unexpected turns. Kaz and I went through with the divorce, of course. Although I can now be in the same room as her if necessary, I choose not to be. We have never had a full conversation since her confession. What would be the point, really? She made attempts to see me at school a few times, but I quickly put an end to that with a brief restraining order. She harbored the misguided hope that once I discovered Scott's true parentage, we might have a chance to reconcile. It turned out she knew me as little as I knew her. Throughout the divorce proceedings, our communication was limited to interactions through our lawyers. In the end, I retained ownership of our house, while Kaz was given possession of 2 rental flats. These flats were valued similarly to the house, and she sought to generate additional income by renting one of them out. As for the 3rd flat, we ultimately decided, with the assistance of our lawyers, to gift it to Scott. This arrangement suited us both, and Scott moved into the flat. For a while, as Jake pursued his master's degree nearby, he stayed with me, serving as my surrogate son. Being alone was always a challenge for me, so I was grateful for his companionship. Scott and I have remained incredibly close. He loves his mother, and she is still a part of his life. However, it saddens me to say that he doesn't hold much affection for her. He views her actions as a betrayal not only towards me but also towards our entire family. Kaz now lives alone, claiming she has no desire to pursue romantic relationships. I suppose it can be challenging to find companionship when one isn't interested in such endeavors. Perhaps in time, circumstances will change, and she may find someone for companionship or even consider adopting a furry friend. As for Angus, he eventually decided to relocate to Spain. Out of all our children, Ruth is the only one who has visited him. According to her, he is full of self-pity and has been struggling with excessive drinking. It seems bitterness has consumed him as he laments how things have unfolded in his life. Ironically, all those experiences he valued so greatly proved not to be worth it in the end. It brings a sense of satisfaction to realize that he finally comprehends the true cost of his actions. But amidst the chaos and turmoil, my life has taken a turn for the better. This evening, I find myself sitting around the table with my new wife, my son, and my daughter-in-law. We are enjoying a delicious meal while I hold my delightful granddaughter on my lap. Kate is here too, and no, we did not embark on a romantic relationship that would never have been viable. She has, however, found companionship with a wonderful man named David, who unfortunately has work-related commitments this evening. David brings joy to her life, and their compatibility is evident. Kate's presence serves to reinforce the fact that she is now my oldest friend, and we share the precious bond of being grandparents to Lucy. Speaking of Lucy, Rian and Scott decided to tie the knot quietly a couple of years ago. Once they discovered that their love could surmount any hurdle, they wasted no time in professing their true feelings for one another. Their wedding day was an intimate affair, largely driven by their desire for a peaceful celebration. Additionally, Ryan chose a low-profile event due to her estrangement from Angus, as well as her refusal to acknowledge Kaz's existence. I must admit, the news of their wedding filled me with immense satisfaction. Rian has made it abundantly clear that while Lucy may visit her grandmother when Scott accompanies her, Kaz will never be welcome in their home, nor will she be entrusted with the responsibility of caring for Lucy independently. However, the true joy and happiness in my life emanate from my wife, Abigail. She entered my life during a period of profound self-doubt and emotional vulnerability, transforming everything for the better. Initially a substitute teacher at the school, our connection was remarkably instantaneous. Love blossomed between us swiftly, and I soon rediscovered the sheer delight of sharing true intimacy with someone who reciprocates the same level of desire. Just 18 months after we first met, we exchanged vows in matrimony, and I can confidently affirm that our happiness knows no bounds. Retirement has granted us the freedom to explore life's many wonders together, and Abigail has proven to be an absolute blessing. Having been widowed without children, she cherishes Lucy with all her heart. It is a unique joy for her to experience the love and affection a child brings, as she now delights in being embraced as Nana. Abigail never thought she would have the chance to assume a grandparental role, and she is incredibly grateful for the opportunity to share in the precious moments of Lucy's life. Scott has confided in me that Kaz harbors intense bitterness towards Abigail. She resents the fact that Abigail gets to enjoy her retirement alongside her husband, her son, and her grandchild. Scott aptly pointed out, though, whose fault is that, mother? Certainly not Abigail's, certainly not Dad's, and certainly not mine. There is simply no arguing with that level of insight and truth. And thus, our family tree continues to grow and flourish, extending its branches wider with each passing year. Throughout our journey, we have encountered numerous challenges, each one seemingly insurmountable at first glance. However, we have faced each obstacle with an unwavering determination and a boundless supply of love, overcoming them together as a united front. The bond that ties us together has become stronger than ever before, fortified by trials and strengthened by adversity. We cherish every precious moment spent in each other's company, recognizing the value of the time we share. Life, in its unpredictable nature, has thrown us a multitude of unexpected curveballs. Yet, instead of allowing these surprises to dampen our spirits, we have learned to embrace them with open arms. We have found joy in the simplest of pleasures, discovering beauty in the mundane and learning to appreciate the fleeting moments that make life truly remarkable. Our story, rich in resilience, forgiveness, and love, serves as a testament to the power of family and the unbreakable spirit that binds us together. As we look back on the chapters of our life that have already been written, we do so with a sense of pride and accomplishment. Each page is filled with memories of laughter and tears, successes and failures, all of which have contributed to the beautiful tapestry that is our family history. And as we stand on the threshold of the future, eagerly anticipating the chapters yet to be written, we do so with excitement and optimism. We revel in the knowledge that, no matter what may come our way, our united front will guide us through the storms and lead us to brighter days. Our journey thus far has been one of growth, learning, and unbreakable bonds. It is a journey that has shown us the importance of holding on to each other, of forgiving quickly and loving deeply. We have learned that together, there is no challenge too great, no obstacle too insurmountable. Our family's story is one of hope, a reminder that with love at the core, anything is possible. As we continue to write our story, we do so with the assurance that our love for one another will see us through whatever life may have in store, embracing each new chapter with joy, resilience, and an ever-growing bond that nothing can break.